Hi there again, everybody. Boyd back with you, and welcome to another exciting edition of TrekWorks. We're out here working on our Bandai 1/350 scale Space Battleship Yamato, and I've made a little bit more progress since our last video. The last video update, I did a little quickie showing the wave motion gun and the first power-up that we did on the model, and I noticed after I shot it that the webcam that I used kind of muffled out the sound pretty good on that. You didn't get a really good indication of how the sound system works. So in a minute here we're going to fire this thing up again and show you how that works and how it sounds. But you can see what I've done since then, guys. I've added a little bit more detail onto this. I've started with more of the upper decking. We've got some of these details going in place, and I've started to add the first layer here of the weathering that I'm doing on the model. Now my client Jason has indicated that he would like to see sort of a look to the ship as it looked when it first was launched and it raised up out of the dried up ocean bed. You know, it was kind of buried in the mud there, and those of you that have seen the show will know exactly what I'm talking about. But so we're going to be using some pastel earth type colors for that. But what I've begun to do here initially is just with some of the darker shades start to do some of the wear on the and some shadowing here and there on the hull, and you can see it's looking really nice. And as soon as I started laying it down, you could immediately see that it's really adding a lot of realism to the model, and just bringing out the details quite a bit more. Now what I've been doing here is I've got some black, and I've got some dark gray that I've been working with, and some darker shades of red to sort of vary the color on the panels a little bit there on the red section of the hull. And then I've also been using some of my iridescent blue pearl, actually, that I used on my Into Darkness Enterprise in my refit. Now you might think that sounds a little crazy on this type of model, but I've just very lightly gone over it in some areas here, sort of some highlights here and there, to sort of give the model a little bit of a metallic look as well, and it really looks cool. It's meant to be very subtle, though. I definitely didn't want to overdo it, and it only shows up here and there. And then you can see here at the rear, I've started to work on the cone. I've added some shading onto this with some metallic colors, some really light dusting of silver, and actually some gold has been dusted on here to sort of give it that metallic look and give it that look of metal that's been heated up and cooled down and heated up and cooled down, you know, like a manifold does on a car or something like that, or a motorcycle or something. And then I've shaded a little bit in here inside the exhaust cone to make it look burned a little bit and worn. And then what I'll be doing is I'll be layering in some shading and using a bit of a wash here to bring out the details of these lines and things like that. And again, keep in mind this is all going to be done in layers. And once we get our shading done there, we'll come back and we'll start doing some of the pastel colors up here on the top, which will be some kind of tans and browns that will sort of bring out that look that it had a little bit of dirt or a little bit of mud on it. But we're not going to go very heavy on that at all. Jason's indicated he definitely doesn't want to go overboard on that. Just give a little hint of that there. And but again, it's just this little bit of detail here has already made the model look 100 times more realistic. And you can see what I'm working on right here is on each side in this area right here on the model, there is these missile launchers. There's a door that actually opens up to expose these. And I'm working on that right now, so we'll be putting those together and then adding these panels in place. And then we're going to be pretty much done with the assembly of the main hull. And the rest of the assembly will be all installing these guns and then doing all the detail on the superstructure. And of course there are some really detailed photo etch parts, including all the railing that has to go on all the way around the perimeter here at the front of the deck and also at the rear of the deck and around the radar masts and some antennas and things like that. So we're a long ways off from being done with this, guys. This is just the main part. There are still literally hundreds of parts left to go onto this model. Of course, we've got to assemble all the main guns and make sure they turret and elevate properly. But so far, everything on the model has just gone spot on. I'm going to start out again here by, again, we'll push this first key here, which is to activate the main lights. And I'm going to get you in tight on this because if you look closely in the windows there, you can see that all those interiors are detailed. I did a little bit of paint work on those to help bring out some of the details. But the entire control room and everything is in there, in the top, bottom, and even the captain's quarters up here at the very top. You can really see that when the lights are on. It really looks cool in person. And again, just going back to crediting Bandai for all the detail they put into this model. And then of course, to fire the wave motion gun, you push the main trigger here. And one thing I want to point out is that it's been pointed out in the instructions that the electronic eye here has a very narrow field of view. So when you're operating the remote, you need to have it just about pointing directly at it to make sure it's going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and fire the wave motion gun again, and you can hear, you should be able to get a much more clear sound out of it this time. So here we go. I love how that changes colors as it goes. It starts off with the deep red and then changes to the sort of the bright white and then ends with a sort of a red violet as it slowly fades out, just like it did on the show. And that's really sweet. Now I'll point out too, you know, as I mentioned, this model has an audio out jack on the back side of the stand, but as you can see, the sound that comes out of this just basically stock unit is very loud and nice and clear. So that's a nice quality audio chip that they've got in there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and fire up the by pushing this button here, we'll fire up the wave motion engine at the rear. And that's just great. I really love that. And let's go ahead and fire a couple of the main guns here, and you can hear the sound. Again, you can probably hear them much more clearly than I had on the last video. And let's fire the secondary guns here. Here you can see, probably better on this camera, the little servos moving back and forth. Once we get the guns mounted on there, of course, they'll be moving back and forth, and that's really, really cool. So yeah, she's coming together great, guys. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start getting these pieces assembled here. We'll get ready to install the side bulkheads on. I'll set the camera on the tripod when we come back, and we'll take you guys through getting those pieces all put in place, and we'll be moving forward with some more of the build work on this model. So again, mentioning that we've got a long ways to go on this. I know a couple of you mentioned that it looks like I'm almost done, but there's a lot of work to be done on this model still. And then of course we've got all of our shading and weathering to do, which I plan on doing most of that before we start getting all these really small intricate pieces on it. And it will be easier to paint it that way, and we'll make sure we get it done really nice and clean. So it's looking beautiful so far. So be back in a second, guys. Hang tight and we'll get more progress done on the model today. So we'll see you then. Be right back. Okay, everybody, so back we are with more work to be done on the hull plating and installing the upper hull plating on the model here. And what I've done now is I've got these parts all ready to go for assembling this little missile launcher assembly that we're going to see right here on the side bulkheads below the secondary guns. So let's go ahead and start putting those together. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit tighter on this for you so you can follow along. And pretty straightforward here. We've got this these two little springs which I've kept off to the side. We're going to install these onto the back side of these missile tips. Now on the instructions, if you look at this detail on here, they show that there are some sort of triangle shapes behind that, and they want those to be facing downward. So we're going to go ahead and just slide this part inside. And next, this piece here, you can see it has a sort of a bevel on it, an angle facing down. This goes down towards the bottom. And we're just going to slip this into place and make sure that the missile tips extend all the way through that. Okay, so we've got that on there really nice. And then we've got this little outer door assembly here that these little brackets mount onto. And I'm going to go ahead and put those on here now. Make sure they move freely and everything. Looks like we're looking good there. Oh, I've got one little burr on there still kind of hanging on. We'll get rid of him real quick. Okay, and this other one's going on. And then basically these brackets will slide in place. Actually, I've got the door upside down. Let me correct that really quick. And we'll slide this door in place. Over top. And again, more perfect fit on this. These are just locking into place just perfect. And you can see that we have our nice door assembly here, which when we open it, you just raise these up basically, exposing our missile tips, which looks really cool. Now, these were molded in gray, so I painted those red to sort of give them some contrast and yet match with the other colors on the model. And now we're just going to install this. You can see we have our tabs here, and we're going to install this on the back side. And this will fit into place perfectly. You can see there's our assembly, and we'll try the door once more, make sure that raises. And that's what you get, guys, and that looks really, really... Okay, everybody, so here we are. We're set up, and you can see that I've got my little panels that have been installed now on the sides, and now we've got some more weathering to do on these. What we're going to do here basically is we're going to put a little bit of shadowing around this shape here and this shape here, and then highlight these ridges a little bit, and we're going to highlight these doors and some of the little other ridges that we see here, and keep this this kind of flow that we've got going. I've set up my airbrush with some thin down black paint, and I'm spraying at very, very low pressure here, as you can see. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, when I airbrush, I like to hold both hands on the brush so I can be a little bit more steady. I've just, some of the really good airbrush people that I've seen that I've kind of learned from, I've watched their technique, and a lot of them tend to use that. So let's, it just helps you hold a really nice steady hand and concentrate on the control lever here. So I'm going to start out just very lightly. Start making a little shadow around this, and you can see how that works really nice. We just want to give it sort of a highlight, and then I'm going to highlight up and down on these little ridges here. Again, with the theory on this weathering, guys, or painting and airbrushing in general, you can add more, but you can't take it back once you've sprayed it on there unless you're going to repaint the whole thing. So go light. And just bring in some life to these little shapes on here is all we're doing. Just creating some shadow around it and things like that. I wanted to darken these up just a little bit. Let's put a little bit here in this. And we've got a little panel line sort of separation here we want to sort of highlight a little bit. And you can see right away what a difference that makes, guys, as far as adding some realism to the model. It just really gives it more of a sense of scale, and the shapes start showing up for us a little bit more. And that really looks nice, just that little bit right there. And keep in mind that I'm going to layer this again with a little bit of lighter, darker gray, which is going to take away that sort of black, all black look, and sort of blend into the panel like I've done on the rest of the model here. So we've got a couple more shades to go with. Now let's start working on this little detail right here. I'm just going to put a little bit of shadow on these ridges that you see and around this little hatch cover here. And then what I want to do is I want to come around and sort of shadow the edge of that whole thing there. And you can see that instantly it made that look much more realistic. And we're just going to put a couple little streaks here at the leading edge of it. And voila. So let me tighten in on this a little bit more for you here, and you can see what we've done. And there you go, a little bit of weathering, guys. I'm really happy with how that looks. And like I mentioned a second ago, we're doing multiple layers of color on this. We're going to be doing our gray, and then we're going to tint a little bit of that blue color that I talked about, the sort of the iridescent blue, just very lightly here and there, just to sort of make it give sort of a rippling effect so that it looks like there's some imperfections in the panels and things like that. And then we're going to be doing all of our pastel colors, which we're going to do a little bit on the deck and a little bit here and there on the sides of the hull to give it that light mud-covered effect that Jason wanted. Here you can see that we've got our little missile doors there, and they're working nice and fine. So okay there, guys, well, I thought I'd come back and show you sort of a final shot here after I've completed the first stage of my airbrushing work, and you can see that I've gone back with my shades of gray now, and I've blended where we did our black detailing, which you probably thought, oh, some of those are too dark. Well, you can see what happens here, guys, when you come back with a an overlay on that with some gray that I chose, which is a little bit different shade than the hull itself. It adds sort of a triple color there, where you've still got that sort of black highlight that we had there that we wanted to do for the shadow, but now you've blended it in where it looks like it's kind of worn around the whole entire area, and it blends it in really nice. Again, as I mentioned, you're building this when you do weathering, you're building it up in layers, and you can see it turn out really nice. Here we can see I did a little bit more work on the cone there around the rear section of it. You can see I sort of shaded a little bit darker to give it that where that heat buildup has been there, and you can sort of see the metallic look on that now. Looks really great. And there you can see our missile tubes. Now I extended the wings too here and did a little bit of shading on the leading edges of those, sort of like they would be worn and have gotten hot a few times from entering into the atmosphere at high speeds, and I think that looks fantastic. And I add a little detail there of some of the little shapes and things that are on that, and it looks really nice. So okay, guys, well, we'll be back here in a couple more days. I'm going to be working next with some of the pastel colors up on the upper deck here, and as I talked about, some of the earth tone shades with some lighter colored browns and things like that to give us what Jason was looking for as far as a little bit of that leftover mud and things like that. Again, when we say mud, we don't mean we're going to cake this thing like really heavy amounts, guys. We're just going to give little traces of it here and there. Very similar to what you see up on the box art here. You can see there's some at the front deck there and a little bit at the rear where it's sort of dusted on there, but not much on the sides. There's a little bit on the center section there, but not heavily piled on there. So we should be able to do a pretty nice job on that. So yeah, and you can see that with a little bit of shading and things like that, guys, if you stand back and look at this now, it doesn't look nearly as much toy-like as it did before. And I mean, it looks like a real battleship now, where you'd expect a little bit of wear and definition of some of the shapes and everything are standing out quite a bit more. So it's turning out really, really well, guys. So, all right, everyone. Well, I'll see you in a few more days. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. I'm having a blast working on it. And we'll be back with some more on the 350 Yamato by Bandai. So we'll see you then, guys. And until then, everyone, take care out there and build those models, and happy modeling, everyone.